There comes a moment in the journey when it all falls into place. Not because we planned it, but because love had an ulterior motive all along we were being prepared to see. This is that moment for me. I'm Giselle Gamby, coach, mentor, and podcaster, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast Season 6. This season is for the ambassadors, the evolutionary leaders, the ones who dare to go first, the ones whose mission it is to lead from the consciousness of love and break the sound barrier of what is possible. This is for those who know they are part of something greater, and for those who never thought they were. My intention is that Season 6 will change your life, that it will activate your mission and liberate you to lead from the abundance of your wisdom and be in your full-bodied self-expression no matter what, because love is the ultimate mastermind. Hello, Intuitive Pull community. Before we get into this episode, I did want to do a little bit of framing up. This episode speaks to the subject matter of terminal illness and also voluntary assisted dying. So you get to choose whether you want to continue listening or viewing this episode, or if this doesn't feel right for you. I also wanted to say that the reason why I have this interview with Janine will be revealed in the actual interview itself. However, what I wanted to say up front is that, as I've already shared, Season 6 is about activating our missions. It's about liberating ourselves to be in our full-bodied self-expression no matter what. So why would I be having this conversation with Janine in that context? Nobody would ever want to be in the situation that Janine is in, including Janine herself. And we might presume that someone who is facing terminal illness would be in a state of powerlessness, in a state of victimhood. And that is far from what Janine is leading from. Of course, Janine has her humanity and all that goes with facing the end of life. And Janine is so fully in her leadership, and a mission has been activated through these last few months such that she wants to make an impact through this podcast, potentially, around voluntary assisted dying. And I'm not going to say anything more other than to say that is the context that I wanted to add to this podcast episode before we get into it. Please feel free to share this episode if you have people in your life that are in similar situations to Janine. Janine has a big mission to get this message out there, and we would so appreciate your generosity in sharing the love here. Welcome to the Intuitive Pull podcast. It is a huge privilege for me to, first of all, know Jannine Gearon, and also to have Janine here on the podcast. So I met Janine, I think it was at the end of December, and we started coaching at the end of January, and now it's the 22nd of April. And Janine was referred to me through Dr. Carol Haddad, our wonderful integrative oncologist who I've spoken about on the podcast many times and who has actually been interviewed on the podcast a couple of times. Janine decided that she wanted to share her journey around voluntary assisted dying. And she was initially looking at podcasts that were specifically about that. And yet, when she delved further, didn't feel that they were the podcast platforms for her. So because I have a podcast, I invited Janine to come on the Intuitive Pool. And so here we are. So I want to say, first of all, thank you for your generosity in sharing you. That's where I want to start. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're amazing, really. So I just want to frame up what, or who I actually should say, who I have experienced Janine to be. So actually, before I do that, can you just please give us a little brief rundown on your diagnosis, when it happened?
Yep,
And then I'm going to frame up how I've experienced you.
sure.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctors in June last year. I had a little baby coming to stay in the house and I needed to get whooping cough injection, vaccination. So happily went along to do that. My doctor said, we haven't done bloods in a while, let's do bloods. And I was open to that. So got the bloods done. Got a phone call the next day, or it could even have been later that day, to say that she was booking me in for an ultrasound on my tummy. And I'm like, okay, because I hadn't actually felt sick at all. And so the bloods were the only sort of indication that things weren't going well. So she ordered more blood tests. She ordered an ultrasound, and she really hurried it along. So I was getting a little nervous really from the outset. We went from a ultrasound to an MRI, from an MRI to a CAT scan with contrast, and then just a couple of days later, a colonoscopy. The very next day after the colonoscopy, a biopsy of the liver. And so it sort of happened really quickly. It was only a matter of, I feel like it was only like 10 days or something between that first blood test and getting to the point where I'm having a biopsy of my liver, and doctors that are part of my team are all sort of squeezing my hand or my foot whenever they'd come anywhere near me, and I'd be thinking, what's going on? Someone needs to tell me what's going on. Anyway, so eventually spoke to my GP again, and she said I had a very rare and very aggressive cancer in my bile ducts, and that had led to a tumour growing in the liver, and my inflammation markers were up and my liver function was all over the place. And so we started looking into different means of treatment, but it became obvious very early that my oncologist felt that what we were doing was purely palliative, and to put me through chemo when it's only hopefully given me a little bit more time just didn't seem to work for me. He'd said I had between 9 months and 15 months to live. And that was about it. Like, he didn't really care. We'll just put you on chemo maybe for the next 42 weeks and then we'll review it. I'm like, I'm not doing chemo for 42 weeks. That sounds pretty horrendous. So I quick smart did a whole ton of research on a topic I've got to say I never showed any interest in. And so all of a sudden I'm researching different cancer hospitals and things around the world. My husband, who's been incredibly supportive, we found a place in Mexico that I'd heard about through another podcast. And we ended up in Mexico for 2 weeks and did the program there. I'm very late stage, and there wasn't really going to be very much that they could do for me either. But what they did give me was a sense of control. So the Western doctors hadn't really been interested in that. They just deliver the prognosis and then knows the time for lunch, I'm off. They're just so cold. I guess they probably feel they have to be, but as a patient, it's pretty tough. So at least getting to Mexico, I felt like I was making forward action. I was doing something. They introduced me to a lot of different alternative treatments that I now do back here. So it wasn't a complete loss. But yeah, coming back, have decided to do a little immunotherapy. But once again, it's palliative. It's just hoping that if I do this once every 4 weeks, it will just keep me healthier for as long as I can. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for painting that picture. And what you said there about it gave you a sense of control. This is the thing that I've seen, and I've commented several times to you, that regardless of the circumstances that you're in, you have still decided that you have choice all along as to how you hold yourself, as to how you respond, as to the medicine. We talked about this before, the medicine that you give yourself, not necessarily in medicine in the form of chemotherapy, but in the form of lots of different support.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. Yeah, one of my favorite books. One of my favorite books. And my biggest takeaway, I know there's lots of takeaways in that book, but my biggest takeaway was that even in a concentration camp, Dr. Frankl still knew that he had choice as to how he showed up every day.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the thing, that's how I see you, that you have choice as to how you show up, that you're not powerless when most people would think that they are powerless to the diagnosis, when most people would feel so resentful and regretful and angry. And I know that there has been moments of that. And you've still decided that you're the one in the driver's seat. Yeah. And so how I've experienced you, again, it is remarkable because we wouldn't normally think that this is how someone would choose to lead their lives from when they've been given a diagnosis like you have. I have experienced you as leading from a place of self-love, of leading from a place of bravery in having conversations, like really intimate conversations that most people would steer away from because they'd be too afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah.
I've experienced you as someone who has so much compassion for the people around you, like your mum and your friends and your family and John, and when most people would be only thinking about themselves. And you said something to me last week, which we were in our one-on-one just before this interview. You said to me, and I'm going to share the exact words that you shared with me. I'm lucky to know that death is coming.
Yes. And I know that sounds like an odd thing to say, but as scary as it is to know the date, to not know it's coming has its own issues. So as it is now, I get to tell all the people, you've made my life better. Thanks for being in my life. And people often don't know the impact that they've had on those around them. And so I've really made that kind of part of my mission, to tell people if they've been ever, the turning point in a decision, or an inspiration, or whatever it is in my life, to tell them that they've been that. Because there's got to be some benefit to knowing, there has to be. And at least this way I get to have that time, which you don't get if you have a heart attack or a stroke. Or
True. But still, as I've said to you before, you could have responded in a way of being so resentful, being so angry, feeling so powerlessness that there would be, you wouldn't be present to love. And yet that's what you are present to. And I know from having known you since January or December that you have led with love, and you've absolutely acknowledged your humanity. And that is part of leading with love. You have, one of the things that we do every time we meet is we talk and we acknowledge whatever there is there to speak about. And that's rich in itself. And then we close our eyes and we go silent. And it's part of our weekly get togethers that we most love. Even now I can feel the energy of it, right? And well, tell me about that. I'm not going to put words into your mouth. Tell me about that experience. When we go quiet, what's that about for you?
Well, I mean, I've been a yoga teacher for many years as well, so I'm very comfortable with that. When we shut down senses, other senses get louder. And I feel when we shut down our eyes, and to a degree fuzzy our ears, so that it really is just this capsule of the two of us. I find with my eyes closed, I can really drop in, and it's astounding what comes up. It's often, well, it is always right to the point, right to the heart of whatever it is we've been discussing. And it's a nice way to kind of put a full stop at the end of our sessions, both walk away with our hearts a little bigger.
We do. I agree. I agree. So I want to bring it back to, why are we having these interviews? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So someone told me about voluntary assisted dying. A friend of mine told me about it. He's a Chinese medicine doctor, and he has a lot of patients that are dealing with terminal diseases come to him. And he was explaining that one of his ladies was choosing to do voluntary assisted dying. And I hadn't known that it was in Queensland yet. Got to say, it's not something I much thought about, although I was always in favour of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did some research and sort of started the process. One of the things that I think is a problem is that doctors can't tell you about voluntary assisted dying unless you ask.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the information isn't, it's like chicken and egg kind of thing. You have to know about it to ask for it. How are you going to know about it if no one's told you?
Yes.
So I think it's important to get the word out, because I know there'd be plenty of doctors who would feel like they were like those ones working in palliative care on the oncology ward, like they're such sweet, heart-led people, like it's such a thankless job. And you think, I'm sure they're busting to tell people about it, but they just can't. It's about getting the word out there as much as anything else. They have all these funny rules. So I have to, it's like an old-fashioned dance. I have to ask for information. I have to ask to be shown the information to join the voluntary assisted dying program. So that's the first step. So you sit with the doctor and they ask you all sorts of questions, work out your eligibility. So it's things like you have to be a Queensland citizen for a year or more. You have to have a terminal illness that can't be fixed, and that will probably mean you'll die within 12 months. That's part of the criteria. I guess they don't want people that could be having years left to have access to this, and that's a good thing, I think. So there's things like that there's this eligibility criteria that you have to meet, and so part of the conversation is all about that. Are you of sound mind? Do you know what you're asking about? All of that sort of thing. Then the next step is you have to get a second opinion. So then you have to go to another VAD doctor, and there's not that many of them. They have to do special training to become qualified in voluntary assisted dying. And it would be a big responsibility too, I think. So you do your second opinion, and they basically make sure that you're not being coerced, and that's one of the main points the whole way along. So they ask all the same questions again. You go back to your regular VAD doctor, and then you have to officially ask again. So I think there's 4 times you have to officially ask 4 times before you're granted the prescription. So then, they give you forms you have to take home. You really couldn't do it quickly. It's not it's designed not to be something that you can rush through. So the last where we're up to, the last appointment, they gave forms for John to take home to say that, yep, he would be basically the person of contact. But they wouldn't let us do them there at the clinic. We had to take them home and then return them to him. And then our next appointment, I think, is the final one. So I make my final request, and then, they've passed me so far as eligibility and all of that sort of thing. And so then I think I'm good to go. So you can make a choice to have the prescription as a drink, so that you go to, I think there's one pharmacy in Brisbane or something like that. Like, it's not easy. I'm on the Gold Coast. Brisbane's sort of an hour and a half away. But that's where you'd go to get the medication. And it's all very under lock and key. And John would have to be the person to take control of it because he's the nominated person for that role and all that sort of thing. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that you get the doctor to administer a drip. And when my doctor was talking to me about it, he said, we give you a sedative. He said, you'll go to sleep, and then then I'll give you the final one. And that definitely sounds like a better way of doing it. I'd be scared I couldn't swallow, or that I'd throw it up, or just get too anxious. I like the idea of being very calm, very relaxed, and then it's it's done. But yeah, you have to decide all of that now, because once it's in place in the documentation, you can't stray. So if I decided then I wanted to do the drink, I'd have to go through this whole program all over again. Yeah. So yeah, you have to decide that. You have to decide if you're going to be in a hospital, if you want to be at home, or in a park, or to bowls club,
Wow.
wherever you're happiest.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought I'd probably just stick to being at home.
Okay.
Well, actually, I wanted to go to the hospital because I didn't want to make a mess at home and didn't want John to have an area of the house he maybe felt like he wanted to avoid, or that made him sad, or any of that sort of thing. But he was adamant that I hate hospitals, and so
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know this update. I thought you had
yeah,
chosen hospital.
I had chosen hospital, but he's like, you hate being in hospital. We do it at home.
Oh, wow. Go, John. Go,
Okay.
John.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
then in my true fashion, then asked my doctor, am I going to poo myself? Am I
Yep.
going to wee myself? I'm like all of that. I want
Yeah.
to know all of that. I want to be set up for all of that. I
Yeah.
don't want this to be hard on the people that love me that are there.
Yes.
And he said nothing like that will happen.
Okay.
If you're at all worried, you just go and have a little wee before we start, and you come back.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. We're nearly the finish line's in sight.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So I understand now that one of the reasons why you wanted to podcast your journey was that so that people actually know that it's an option, because I didn't know that doctors weren't able to talk
No.
about it, that you needed to be the one to bring the subject up.
Yep.
And you're right, like not every, you didn't even know. I did, because I had experienced somebody who um, in New South Wales, where it wasn't law then, and he had motor neuron disease, and he assisted in progressing the discussion before he
Yep.
passed away. And now, so I only know about it because I've had direct experience with somebody that I've supported. But
Yeah.
otherwise, if you don't have experience, really, you don't know about it, because it's not something that people talk about.
No.
So thank you for that. Thank you for um, using your voice to allow more people to know that that's an option. And why else did you want to podcast your journey?
Um, all of the podcasts that I'd researched, it's often what I'll do if I hear about something new, I'll go to podcasts and I'll just listen to a few random podcasts. Um, and when I was trying to find podcasts about voluntary assisted dying, there was one that dealt with that specifically, but it was all the stories were being told through the adult children of the people that had made the choice to go that way. Or otherwise, it was doctors talking to other doctors about it, or someone in the know talking to, I think it was Nurses Victoria or whatever. But no regular Joe is going to go and listen to that podcast. Like it's not attractive as something to listen to. But I wanted to get that message out, and I thought it really needed a first person voice,
Mm. Yeah.
not just the family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got tears in my eyes because, see, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that the podcast that you listened to had no first person people sharing their story. I didn't know that.
Mm.
And so the reason why the tears are here is because, again, once again, here you are demonstrating that even with, a diagnosis like you have, you are still choosing how you show up, and how you're showing up in relation to podcasting your journey is just so compassionate and so generous and so giving that you would, sit here with me so that
You're very easy to talk to.
but so that, people who may be thinking about it for themselves are actually in the presence of you. Like to me, that is just incredibly selfless and incredibly giving. And again, we talk about medicine not being simply at the physical level. This level of giving and this level of selflessness is wonderful medicine. It's
Yeah.
powerful because it's the medicine of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you always get back. It's never a one-way
No,
transaction.
no,
No.
no. So tell us about what your experience has been. I know from a practical perspective, you've shared, you've outlined the process. What about from an emotional perspective? How's it been for you?
There is a real comfort in having control over that. There's a comfort in knowing that I'm not going to get to that point where someone else needs to wash me, feed me. That's not a future that I'm at all interested in. Um, so there is something very nice about having the control of knowing if this gets too much, you've got an out. And in a way, it just makes you keep going. I don't know. There's something about when you know you've got the option, that's all you need. You just need to know you've got the option. And the doctors are so clear every time you go there that you don't have to use it. You can go through this, you can get the prescription filled. You don't need to do this. You can change your mind at any time. Is absolutely no problem.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think that's great. Like it's just a little something in the toolbox.
Yeah.
If things get too rough, then I know I can do that. I can
Yeah.
fall into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so little that I have control over
Yes.
that's a nice one
Yes.
to have.
Yes. And the paradox, isn't it, of having control over death? Like
Yeah.
so much paradox in that, irony in that. What about how has it been speaking about voluntary sister dying, at home with your family? How has it been speaking about it with your friends?
So generally speaking, the first time I bring it up, there's just tears and a little bit of shock. But as I've said to all like my closest friends, mum, my husband, it's all like I need to talk about it to normalize it. So, and I respect if they really don't want me to talk to them about it, that's not a problem at all. I have other people I can talk to. I mean, that's one of the reasons I came to you in the first place, was to say the things that I thought might be upsetting those people that I love. But it's important even for with my friends to talk about it, to make it normal, so that when it happens, it's not, I don't know, a little bit of the shock and whatever's taken out from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a brave conversation to have, though, isn't it?
Don't have much choice. I think too, when anyone goes through trauma of whatever that trauma is,
Mm.
that it actually just intensifies who the person is. You were saying some people would just be whinging and complaining and woe is me, but they're probably like that in other areas of their life anyway. in some ways, when you go through trauma, it just, amplifies who you really are. And that cuts away any of the bullshit. I won't say it cuts away all ego, but a lot of ego gets cut away, and you're a bit more honest with yourself about yourself.
Yeah.
About, because who are you kidding? And there's such, limited time. That's no time for bullshit.
Yeah. You told me also the moment you think about death, it brings you back to life.
Yeah. Because that's your option. You can either wallow in something, or you can move out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel that this conversation, of course, it's here to be of service to those people impacted directly by terminal illness, and so that they know that voluntary assisted dying exists. So potentially they may choose to go through the process themselves. Um, which I said already is just such an incredibly selfless and generous choice that you've made to have these conversations. And I also feel that this conversation isn't only directed to those who are facing terminal illness, right?
Right.
Because through you, we get to learn the moment you think about death, it brings you back to life. Potentially, this conversation will have people consider their own lives, consider their own choices, consider where they're coming from, consider what they've been repressing, considering what they want to give voice to, considering.
Just to picture how they would like their life to look
Yeah,
5 years from now,
yeah,
and to start making those little steps towards that.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So again, I'm going to use the expression of this being the medicine. May this conversation be the medicine for many people, including you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else you want to say for today?
No, not for today.
Yeah, that feels complete. Thank you.
It does.
Thanks.
Thanks, beautiful.